To simplify CVP calculations, managers typically adopt the following assumptions with respect to these factors. 1. Selling price is constant. The price of a product or service will not change as volume changes. 2. Costs are linear and can be accurately divided into variable and fixed components. The variable costs are constant per unit, and the fixed costs are constant in total over the entire relevant range. 3. In multi-product companies, the mix of products sold remains constant. Learning Objective 1 is to explain how changes in activity affect contribution margin and net operating income. The contribution income statement is helpful to managers in judging the impact on profits of changes in selling price, cost, or volume. The emphasis is on cost behavior. Contribution margin, CM, is the amount remaining from sales revenue after variable expenses have been deducted. Contribution margin is used first to cover fixed expenses. Any remaining contribution margin contributes to net operating income. Sales, variable expenses, and contribution margin can also be expressed on a per-unit basis. If racing sells an additional bike, $200 additional CM will be generated to cover fixed expenses and provide a profit. Each month, RBC must generate at least $80,000 in total contribution margin to break even, which is the level of sales at which profit is zero. If RBC sells 400 units in a month, it will be operating at the break-even point. Total sales will be 400 bicycles times $500 each, or $200,000, and total variable expenses will be 400 bicycles times $300 each for $120,000. Contribution margin is exactly equal to total fixed expenses. If RBC sells one more bike, 401 bikes, net operating income will increase by $200, which is the contribution margin per unit. We do not need to prepare an income statement to estimate profits at a particular sales volume. Simply multiply the number of units sold above break-even by the contribution margin per unit. If RBC sells 430 bikes, its net operating income will be $6,000, 30 units times $200 per unit. The contribution format income statement can be expressed as profit equals sales minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses. This equation can be used to show the profit RBC earns if it sells 401 bicycles. Notice the answer of $200 mirrors our earlier solution. Sales equals 401 units sold times $500, or $200,500. Variable expenses equal 401 units times $300, or $120,300. Subtracting fixed expenses of $80,000 equals profit of $200. When a company has only one product company, we can further refine the equation as shown on this slide. Both the selling price per unit and the variable expenses per unit can be multiplied by the quantity sold before subtracting fixed expenses. This equation can also be used to show the $200 profit RBC earns if it sells 401 bikes. It is often useful to express the simple profit equation in terms of the unit contribution margin, unit CM, as follows. Unit CM equals selling price per unit minus variable expenses per unit, or unit CM equals P minus V. The profit equation can be expressed as profit equals unit CM times Q minus fixed. The profit equals unit CM times Q minus fixed expenses can be used to compute RBC's $200 profit if it sells 401 bikes. Learning Objective 2 is to prepare and interpret a cost-volume profit, CVP graph, and a profit graph. The relationships among revenue, cost, profit, and volume can be expressed graphically by preparing a cost-volume profit, CVP graph. Racing Bicycle developed contribution margin income statements at 0, 200, 400, and 600 units sold. We will use this information to prepare the CVP graph. In a CVP graph, unit volume is usually represented on the horizontal x-axis and dollars on the vertical y-axis. Draw a parallel line to the volume axis to represent total fixed expenses of $80,000. Choose some sales volume, say 400 units, and plot the point representing total expenses, fixed and variable, at that sales volume. Draw a line through the data point back to where the fixed expenses line intersects the dollar axis. Choose some sales volume, say 400 units, and plot the point representing total sales. Draw a line through the data point back to the point of origin. The break-even point is where the total revenue and total expenses lines intersect, 400 units or $200,000 in sales. The profit area is above the break-even point, and the loss area is below the break-even point. An even simpler form of the CVP graph is called the profit graph. The graph is based on the equation profit equals unit CM times Q minus fixed costs. The break-even point, where profit is 0, is at 400 units sold. Learning Objective 3 is to use the contribution margin ratio, CM ratio, to compute changes in contribution margin and net operating income resulting from changes in sales volume. The contribution margin as a percentage of sales is referred to as the contribution margin ratio, CM ratio. This ratio is computed as contribution margin divided by sales. For RBC, the ratio is $80,000 divided by $200,000, or 40%. Each $1 increase in sales results in a total contribution margin increase of 40 cents. The CM ratio can also be calculated by dividing the contribution margin per unit by the selling price per unit. $200 divided by $500 equals 40%. The variable expenses as a percentage of sales is referred to as the variable expense ratio. This ratio is computed as variable expenses divided by sales. For RBC, the ratio is $120,000 divided by $200,000, or 60%. Having defined the two terms, it bears emphasizing that the contribution margin ratio and the variable expense ratio can be mathematically related to one another. The CM ratio is equal to 1 minus the variable expense ratio, or 1 minus 60% equals 40%. If RBC increases sales from 400 to 500 bikes, $50,000, contribution margin will increase by $20,000, $50,000 times 40%. Coffee Klatch is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. An average of 2,100 cups are sold each month. What is the CM ratio for Coffee Klatch? The correct answer is 0.758. The unit contribution margin of $1.13 divided by the selling price of $1.49 equals a CM ratio of 0.758. The relationship between profit and the CM ratio can be expressed using the equation profit equals CM ratio times sales minus fixed expenses. If RBC increased its sales volume to 500 bikes, what would management expect profit or net operating profits to be? 40% times $250,000 minus $80,000 equals expected profit of $20,000. Learning Objective 4 is to show the effects on net operating income of changes in variable costs, fixed costs, selling price, and volume. Example 1. Change in fixed cost and sales volume. What is the profit impact if RBC can increase unit sales from 500 to 540 by increasing the monthly advertising budget by $10,000? If sales revenue increases $20,000, variable expenses will increase $12,000. That, along with a $10,000 increase in fixed costs from the new advertising campaign, results in a net operating decrease of $2,000. A shortcut solution using incremental analysis calculates the increase in CM, 40 units times $200, of $8,000, and subtracts the increase in advertising expenses of $10,000 to calculate the decrease in net operating income of $2,000. Example 2. Change in variable costs and sales. What is the profit impact if RBC can use higher quality raw materials, thus increasing variable costs per unit by $10 to generate an increase in unit sales from 500 to 580? This change will increase sales by $40,000, 80 bikes times $500 per bike. Total variable costs will be 580 units times $310 variable cost per unit, or $179,800. The result is an increase in contribution margin and net operating income of $10,200. What is the profit impact if RBC 1. Cuts its selling price $20 per unit, 2. Increases its advertising budget by $15,000 per month, and 3. Increases sales from 500 to 650 units per month? This change results in sales of 650 units times $480, or $312,000, and an increase in contribution margin of $17,000. Fixed costs increase by $15,000, and net operating income increases by $2,000. Example 4. Change in variable cost, fixed cost, and sales volume. What is the profit impact if RBC 1. Pays a $15 sales commission per bike sold instead of paying salespersons flat salaries that currently total $6,000 per month, and 2. Increases unit sales from 500 to 575 bikes? With this change, sales increase by $37,500. Variable expenses are 575 units times $315, or $181,135. Fixed expenses decrease by $6,000, and net operating income increases by $12,375. RBC has an opportunity to sell 150 bikes to a wholesaler without disturbing sales to other customers or fixed expenses. What price should be quoted to the wholesaler to increase monthly profits by $3,000? A profit of $3,000 on the sale of 150 bikes equals a profit of $20 per bike. Adding the profit to the $300 variable cost per bike means that the selling price required is $320 per bike. This price quote can be proven as 150 bikes times $320 per bike equals a $48,000 increase in sales. Total variable costs will be $45,000, resulting in an increase in operating income of $3,000. Learning Objective 5 is to determine the break-even point. The equation and formula methods can be used to determine the unit sales and sales dollars needed to achieve a target profit of 0. Let's use the RBC information to complete the break-even analysis. The equation method relies on the basic profit equation introduced earlier in the chapter. Because Racing Bicycle has only one product, we'll use the contribution margin form of this equation to perform the break-even calculations. We calculate break-even by setting profit equal to 0. Unit CM times the Q, quantity sold, minus fixed expenses equals the break-even point. In a single product situation, the equation method for computing the unit sales at break-even is $200 times Q equals 0 plus $80,000. Dividing $80,000 by the $200 unit CM results in a Q of 400 units to break even. The formula method is a shortcut version of the equation method. It centers on the idea discussed earlier in the chapter that each unit sold provides a certain amount of contribution margin that goes toward covering fixed expenses. Units sales to break even is calculated as fixed expenses divided by unit CM. Once again, $80,000 divided by $200 equals 400 units. Suppose Racing Bicycle wants to compute the sales dollars required to break even, earn a target profit of $0. Let's use the equation and the formula methods to solve this problem. The equation method is profit equals CM ratio times sales minus fixed expenses. For RBC, the CM ratio is 40%, so 40% times sales minus $80,000 equals 0, and sales equal $80,000 divided by 40%, or $200,000. Now let's use the formula method to calculate the dollar sales at the break-even point. Fixed expenses divided by CM ratio equals the same $80,000 divided by 40%, or $200,000. Coffee Klatch is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. An average of 2,100 cups are sold each month. What is the break-even sales dollars? The correct answer is B, $1,715. Fixed expenses of $1,300 divided by the CM ratio of 0.758 equals $1,715 of break-even sales dollars. Coffee Klatch is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. An average of 2,100 cups are sold each month. What is the break-even sales in units? The correct answer is 1,150 cups. Fixed expenses of $1,300 divided by the CM per unit of $1.13 per cup equals 1,150 cups to break even. Learning Objective 6 is to determine the level of sales needed to achieve a desired target profit. In target profit analysis, we estimate what sales volume is needed to achieve a specific target profit. We can compute the number of units that must be sold to attain a target profit using either the equation method or the formula method. The equation method is based on profit equals unit CM times Q minus fixed expenses. Our goal is to solve for the unknown Q, which represents the quantity of units that must be sold to attain the target profit. Suppose RBC's management wants to know how many bikes must be sold to earn a target profit of $100,000. $100,000 target profit equals $200, the unit CM, times Q, the unknown units to sell, minus $80,000 total fixed expenses. Q equals $180,000 divided by $200, or 900 units required to earn the target profit. The formula method uses the equation target profit plus total fixed expenses divided by CM per unit to calculate the unit sales to attain the target profit. Suppose RBC wants to know how many bikes must be sold to earn a profit of $100,000. Unit sales to attain the target profit level equals the sum of $100,000, the target profit, plus $80,000, fixed expenses, divided by the CM per unit of $200. This means 900 units must be sold to earn profit of $100,000. We can also compute the target profit in terms of sales dollars using either the equation method or the formula method. Suppose RBC management wants to know the sales volume that must be generated to earn a target profit of $100,000. Profit equals CM ratio times sales minus fixed expenses. $100,000 equals 40% times sales minus $80,000 of fixed expenses. Sales equals $180,000 divided by 40%, or $450,000 required to earn a profit of $100,000. Using the formula method, target profit of $100,000 plus fixed expenses of $80,000 divided by the CM ratio of 40% equals dollar sales of $450,000 to attain the target profit. Coffee Klatch is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. Use the formula method to determine how many cups of coffee would have to be sold to attain target profits of $2,500 per month. The correct answer is 3,363 cups. Adding the desired profit of $2,500 to the fixed expenses of $1,300 and dividing by the unit contribution of $1.13 shows the company must sell 3,363 cups of coffee to reach its profit goal. The Coffee Klatch wants to earn a monthly profit of $2,500. How many sales dollars must be generated to attain the target profit level? The correct answer is $5,013. We add the desired profit to the fixed cost and divide by the contribution margin ratio, 0.758. The company must generate sales of $5,013 in order to reach its target profit of $2,500. Learning Objective 7 is to compute the margin of safety and explain its significance. The margin of safety is the excess of budgeted or actual sales dollars over the break-even volume of sales dollars. It is the amount by which sales can drop before losses are incurred. The higher the margin of safety, the lower the risk of not breaking even and incurring a loss. Margin of safety in dollars equals total sales minus break-even sales. Let's look at RBC and determine the margin of safety. If we assume that RBC has actual sales of $250,000, given that we have already determined the break-even sales to be $200,000, the margin of safety is $50,000, as shown. RBC's margin of safety can be expressed as 20% of sales, $50,000 divided by $250,000. The margin of safety can be expressed in terms of the number of units sold. The margin of safety at RBC is $50,000, and each bike sells for $500. Hence, RBC's margin of safety is $50,000 divided by $500, or 100 bikes. Coffee Klatch is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. An average of 2,100 cups are sold each month. What is the margin of safety expressed in cups? The correct answer is 950 cups. The margin of safety equals total sales of 2,100 cups minus break-even sales of 1,150 cups, which is 950 cups. Cost structure refers to the relative proportion of fixed and variable costs in an organization. Managers often have some latitude in determining their organization's cost structure. There are advantages and disadvantages to high fixed cost, or low variable cost, and low fixed cost, or high variable cost, structures. An advantage of a high fixed cost structure is that income will be higher in good years compared to companies with a lower proportion of fixed costs. A disadvantage of a high fixed cost structure is that income will be lower in bad years compared with companies with a lower proportion of fixed costs. Companies with low fixed cost structures enjoy greater stability in income across good and bad years. Learning Objective 8 is to compute the degree of operating leverage at a particular level of sales and explain how it can be used to predict changes in net operating income. Operating leverage is a measure of how sensitive net operating income is to percentage changes in sales. It is a measure at any given level of sales of how a percentage change in sales volume will affect profits. Degree of operating leverage is computed as contribution margin divided by net operating income. To illustrate, let's revisit the contribution income statement for RBC. Recall that racing is currently selling 500 bikes. Contribution margin is $100,000, and net income is $20,000, making the degree of operating leverage equal to 5. With an operating leverage of 5, if RBC increases its sales by 10%, net operating income would increase by 50%. A 10% increase in sales from $250,000 to $275,000 results in a 50% increase in income from $20,000 to $30,000. Coffee Klatch is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. An average of 2,100 cups are sold each month. What is the degree of operating leverage? The correct answer is A, 2.21. Operating leverage is equal to the contribution margin of $2,373 divided by net operating income of $1,073, or 2.21. At Coffee Klatch, the average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is 36 cents. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. An average of 2,100 cups are sold each month. If sales increase by 20%, how much should net operating income increase? The correct answer is 44.2%. Given the degree of operating leverage of 2.21, a 20% increase in sales results in a 44.2% increase in profit. Here is the verification of the increase in net operating income. Take a few minutes and make sure you understand the calculations. Companies generally compensate salespeople by paying them either a commission based on sales or a salary plus a sales commission. Commissions based on sales dollars can lead to lower profits in a company. Let's look at an example. Pipeline Unlimited produces two types of surfboards, the XR7 and the Turbo. The XR7 sells for $100 and generates a contribution margin per unit of $25. The Turbo sells for $150 and earns a contribution margin per unit of $18. The sales force at Pipeline is compensated based on sales commissions. If you were on the sales force at Pipeline, you would push hard to sell the Turbo, even though the XR7 earns a higher contribution margin per unit. To eliminate this type of conflict, commissions can be based on contribution margin rather than selling price alone. Learning Objective 9 is to compute the break-even point for a multi-product company and explain the effects of shifts in the sales mix on contribution margin and the break-even point. Sales mix is the relative proportion in which a company's products are sold. Different products have different selling prices, cost structures, and contribution margins. When a company sells more than one product, break-even analysis becomes more complex, as the following example illustrates. Let's assume RBC sells bikes and carts, and that the sales mix between the two products remains the same. Bikes comprise 45% of RBC's total sales revenue, and the carts comprise the remaining 55%. Based on the sales mix, total contribution margin is $265,000, and total sales is $550,000. Making the combined contribution margin ratio 48.2%, rounded. Fixed expenses of $170,000 divided by the CM ratio of 48.2% equals dollar sales to break-even of $352,697. Note that 45%, or $158,714, of the total is assigned to the bikes, and 55%, or $193,983, is assigned to the carts. Variable expenses for each product are calculated by multiplying the variable expense percentage times the assigned revenue. Because the contribution margin percentage was rounded, there is a rounding error of $176. End of Chapter 6.